Oi oi, it's your boy, the Treston Vines of doing lines, Jack Slack. It's the Jack Slack podcast, and this is the post UFC 320 vibe check. Vibe? Great! Things are back. Well, sort of. MMA's sort of back. Which you could sort of tell from the UFC's reaction to Alex Pereira's very quick knockout of Magomed Ankalayev. Not only posting it to their YouTube immediately, the whole fight, which I think the last time they did that was O'Malley beating Aljo, because that's the main event. You've just sold that for $80, basically, and now you're giving it to people 2 hours later for free. And also the fact that you could see Hunter, whatever his name is, jumping up and down the moment it happened. They're like, oh, thank God, one division where someone interesting is in charge, and also our only living star gets another knockout. From a fight perspective, this was unbelievably impressive. I wrote a big article in the week talking about the first fight and how we would want to see Pereira respond in the second fight. And a lot of that was like, well, the stuff that gave him problems with the pressure. How do you counter the pressure? Blah, blah, blah. And turns out how you counter the pressure is you go out and you immediately get in his face. Because Pereira came out, threw a 1-2 right off the bat, and Ankalayev was already backing up. He backed up and went orthodox against the fence. And then he started trying to body kick with his back to the fence. He looked really confused just by the early aggression of Pereira. Went orthodox, started trying to body kick with his back foot on the fence, chin up in the air, went back to southpaw, then he went back to orthodox, still being crowded, and got banged with a big overhand and put down and elbowed with nice 12-6 elbows to the temple to get the finish. And it's like, looking at that, you go, oh, of course. Of course that's what you do. Because in the first fight, Pereira had so much trouble getting going. And in this fight, actually, you didn't see his left hook really at all, which is his big punch. He knocked out Yuri Belgari back in the day with overhands. But his big weapon has always been the left hook and how dangerous it is. And it just isn't the same against a southpaw. In that article, I was talking about the differences between the two of them in their lead hooks, because Ankalayev, being a southpaw, meets orthodox fighters all the time. So he meets that open stance matchup all the time. So his right hook is always like a lean back, elbow high, coming in almost over the top of the opponent's shoulder, whereas Pereira's elbow is always low and it comes in smashing from the side. Even when he threw it against Jamal Hill, Hill's southpaw, but Hill was squaring up as Pereira threw it. So shoulder wasn't in the way at all. But yeah, we were talking about how Ankalayev took away the low kicks and the left hook with good hand fighting and aggression and the threat of his own counter right hook, and the low kicks by hanging back and letting them miss, because Pereira, it's a non-telegraphed technique. It's not a non-committal technique. So if you watch Pereira throwing low kicks, he doesn't move his upper body, which is something he only started doing in MMA once he started using the calf kick. But he freezes his upper body and throws the kick as hard as he can from his legs so that you can't see it coming. But the role of the upper body in a kick is to counterbalance you. Throwing your arm back is what stops you from just going a mile off balance once you miss. So anytime he misses a low kick, he gets incredibly out of position. So in the first fight, Ankalayev would hang back and let him miss a couple and then start crowding in on him. And then once Ankalayev was up in his grill, it was very hard for him to kick without risking being force-fed the left straight. If you remember when he got rocked at the end of the second round, he was trying to do an intercepting knee and he sort of went for it, stopped and went, oh, and then he was out of position, just got cracked with his left hand and sent back to the fence. But all of that was a problem because Ankalayev was coming forwards, and because Ankalayev has good head movement, good boxing, particularly in this weight class. He's the only guy in this weight class who wrestles, and he's also one of the only guys in this weight class who can actually box a bit, as in move his head after punches. If you watch Pereira, he lands punches and then he'll move his head to slip and get in with punches, and then he'll just stop and get hit by whatever comes back. But he has the death touch, so it doesn't matter a lot of the time. But in that first fight, Pereira would throw a punch, and then he'd be almost offended or shocked that Ankalayev would, even if he got hit, come back with 2 punches. So not heaps to say about this fight because it was so quick, but really impressive. And there was all this talk about Pereira having an injured left hand and coming in with some kind of sickness in the first fight. And, you always have to think about these sort of excuses, but every fighter has them for every single fight. I don't think any fighter has ever fought healthy in their life at the high levels. I think it was more important that he just got out there and got in Ankalayev's face. Because who knows if if Ankalayev had got into the second round, if they'd fallen back into the same pattern of the first fight, it could have been a lot trickier for Pereira. But he didn't allow it to get tricky. He just got out there and got imposing. And poor old Big Ank, he's the most annoying person in the world online because his social media is entirely managed by Ali Abdelaziz. So this week into the fight, they're meeting up and Pereira is like shouting at him about stuff he's tweeted. And Ankalayev is like, I've no idea what you're talking about. Why are you so angry at me? And after the fight, Pereira seemed really pissed off, not about going back to the tyre shop and the end of Chama. And Ankalayev is like, I don't understand. If he's anything like a lot of the other mountain men fighters, they don't give a shit about Twitter. They're mainly training, eating, or out playing football, which is their real passion. That's the real passion of most athletes anywhere in the world, it seems. Or basketball. But it's an odd one, this, because Ankalayev, if you look at him, you go, yeah, he's got all the skills to be a very difficult champion. But he keeps sort of fucking it up. I mean, he's had the weirdest journey here. There's two guys on his record he's had to fight twice. Well, one due to the idiocy of a ref and the other due to the idiocy of Big Ank. He got very narrowly missed the DQ to Johnny Walker. If they were doing that anywhere but Abu Dhabi, that would have been a DQ. Great weekend for Middle Eastern officiating, by the way, with the 50-45 and no point deductions in the Hughes versus Usman fight. But I'll talk about that one on the Boycast because it's a good one I want to get into in some depth. It was a terrific fight, actually. If you've not seen it, I don't know how to tell you how to watch it except for torrent in your area. Because this whole fight, I did a Filthy Casuals guide earlier this week. I bait and switched people with a bit of Jack Della Maddalena, and then I did mainly Hughes Usman. But I was trying to be like, this is a great matchup. You should watch the second one. And loads of people told me I had not heard fuck all about this fight happening this weekend. So PFL spent all their money buying Bellator, and they now have no marketing budget. But, it is a meme. People complain about the officiating in the Middle East, regarding particularly Muslim fighters. But it's an odd thing where often the local judge has like a more realistic score than the visitors. I think people get awed when they go over there because Keith Peterson was there giving 5 stern warnings for cheating. Co-main was Merab Dvalishvili versus Corey Sandhagen. Another Merab Dvalishvili fight, to be honest. He looked a bit more dangerous than he usually does. We joked about last time he finished Sean O'Malley by a north-south choke, which was dope. But that brought his finishing record in the UFC, only including wins, obviously, because that's how a finishing record works. But his finishing percentage was up to 16 based off that. He has like 2 finishes in, I think it was 15 fights. But this has brought it back down under 15% again, this fight. But he did look good, and he did hurt Corey Sandhagen. It just continued my thinking about the idea of like counter wrestling. I talked about it a lot this week with both my Filthy Casuals guide on the body shots in that both Hughes and Della Maddalena used to deal with reactive double legs. And I talked about it in my article, talking about like how Ankalayev took a whole round by leaning on the fence, basically, in the first fight. In the wrestling, you are punished for nothing happening if you're the guy whose back is to the fence. And if the guy fails to take you down, they don't get penalized in any way. They just have to keep their hands locked. And if they do get you down and you jump back up, that's still seen as a win for them, even if they do no damage or threaten no submissions. So the thing about Sandhagen, and we said this for the Umar fight, and we said this before that even, I think he's one of the best in the world at turning his back and separating the hands. He's really good. If you watch that Umar fight, turns his back in the clinch, gives up the back body lock, peels the hands apart, separates them, turns back into the guy. And even against Merab, he was doing it pretty well in like the 4th and 5th round. But it is a purely defensive response to, wrestling offense or grappling offense. And I think the future of this stuff, in addition to like body shots to stop reactive doubles and so on out in the open, I think the future of fighting against wrestling or fighting against overwhelming wrestling, just keep shooting into the fence, punch, shoot into the fence. The answer to that is going to be threaten your own takedowns. And I talked about like the overhook throws off the fence with your back to the fence, which Islam Makhachev uses, and obviously he's been Khabib's training partner forever, and he's one of the pound-for-pound best fighters in the world right now, but he does not waste time looking for a throw of his own from a bad position. Jack Della Maddalena did it against Bilal, made him let go by threatening throws. And then switches is another one where the guy goes low on your legs, go for the switch. The ninja choke is another one. Like things that actively punish people for engaging in grappling. If you are just like, no, I can negate your grappling and get away, you're just giving up time. Sandhagen's striking looked good. I did, he used to be such a terrific body hitter. If you watch his early UFC run, got into his wrestling and stuff, but now it is like literally look for the lean back left hook, overhand right, sell out on big punches, particularly in this fight. But I just think he would have been so much better served because his gas tank looked phenomenal. He didn't even look tired by the end. And Merab has some of the most ungodly cardio I've ever seen on any athlete ever. So the fact that Sandhagen can go 5 rounds with him without breaks, like he wasn't having an easy time of it. He was working the whole time. There was no moments where he was just like laying there going, oh, I give up. You have the next 3 minutes of this round and I'll try again in the next round. He was constantly working. So if he just prioritized getting to the body a bit more, we could have seen if that affected Merab's cardio. Also low kicks against anyone who wants to wrestle a lot or anyone who has to close the distance fast by like punch, duck into the clinch. Start damaging their legs and get them hobbling. Got a much better chance of catching them with counters when they come in and just shucking them off when they do. But these are all future things. Sandhagen's good enough that he can probably work his way back up and get in during Merab's second lap of the division. Because that's what we're on now. He's basically beaten everyone, and he beat a lot of them before he became champion, which is crazy. So, this is only his 3rd title defense, which I think ties the record. But in terms of who he's not fought in that division, has he fought Yadong? I mean, Yadong's ranked number 5, and I don't rate him particularly highly. So we're kind of running low on contenders in that division. Mario Batista is fantastic, but people are so mad about the Aldo win that he's now got to spin his wheels. Ayman Zahabi? Who I like a lot, but he seems like he's just sort of having a bit of a moment of success. I mean, no one is looking at Ayman Zahabi going, that guy, championship material in any division, like let alone one ruled by this overwhelming cardio machine. And I think what was interesting about this one was that Sandhagen, because Merab does this like 1-2 duck left hook, he's always using his head up and down, which is obviously a nightmare if you're trying to work out whether he's ducking in for a takedown or just ducking to come up with a left hook or an overhand. You saw like 3 in a row. Corey goes, oh, he's striking. Oh, no. Oh, he's wrestling. Here's a knee. Oh, I've missed. He kept trying to time knees as Merab was coming in and missing them. And I think he ended up doing 3 in a row in the last round just out of frustration. Being like, if I get taken down, so what? I'm going to try and take his head off. But it's so hard to do against someone like Merab who's just constantly moving, constantly throwing. And honestly, his power's been looking pretty good lately. Dinged Corey in the second round and then hit him, managed to catch him on the back of the head and put him down in the second round. So honestly, not my favourite fighter in the world to watch. Sandhagen is often not my favourite fighter in the world to watch anymore, since he sort of fell in love with his own wrestling. But it's more to do with like how they follow up on the ground than the fact that they're wrestling. I love a good takedown. Some of the little trips off the fence in this one and the single leg he converted to a double Bazagar style in like the third. Lovely. But sometimes I feel like Merab fights in a way where it's just preventing the fight from happening. But in this one, he was game and he was swinging and doing damage. What else we got on this card? Yuri Prochazka versus Khalil Rountree. I was having a good laugh about Yuri on the Twitter today, just saying like it's great that he trains harder than anyone else and like never noticeably improves. And to be fair, that's not true. I wrote an article back in January after the Jamal Hill fight called like a new look for Yuri Prochazka. He's always stance switched, but he really improved his southpaw outside slip to left hand, so the open side counter, and he was landing that constantly on Jamal Hill. He was making like he'd attack and then he'd switch stances in the attack, slip Jamal's return and come back with the left hand from southpaw. And if you remember, that was a big part in setting up the finish here. During like those clinch exchanges, he ended up southpaw, slipped to his left, came back with the left hand across the top of Khalil Rountree's right hand, which is his lead because he's a southpaw, and stunned him. And the other big part of this fight, I mean, he took a ton of punishment in the first 2 rounds, but the other big part of this fight was the classic Yuri Prochazka look, the right hand wave as if to throw an overhand into right front kick to the body. It's such a, like, you can watch him do that to King Mo in, I don't know, 2015 or something. It's been a part of his game forever. But he hit 2 of them where he just got the ball of his foot right into Khalil's body, and Khalil looked like half the man after eating those. I'll tell you what did annoy me in this one. I mean, Khalil Rountree, wickedly fast. And he throws his punches in this amazing way. It's kind of like Fedor, where they'd say he throws, I think it was Brandon Vera said, he throws his punches like he's trying to kill a motherfucker. There was just something like when you watched Fedor miss punches on the ground even, you went, whoa. You know, you get an audible ooh out of a stadium of Japanese fans who were silent for most things. And when you watch someone throw like that, you know, you can't put your finger quite on what it is. It's just the massive rotation in it and then the speed they throw at and the commitment of the blow. But that's how Khalil throws all his punches. I remember when Anderson Silva, back in his prime, was talking about this guy they had at Black House who was a monster and he was like knocking people out and sparring. They said, oh, he's in the UFC now. He'll be dangerous soon. And it turned out it was like Khalil Rountree with a 2-2 record coming through the Ultimate Fighter. But that was 10, 15 years ago, and you can look at him now and you can absolutely still believe it. He's kind of frustrating because he clearly loves like Muay Thai, but he struggles to like make it work in MMA. He's still obsessed with like his boxing, but he had Liam Harrison over, he had John Haggerty and Christian Knowles, and basically he's gone from being a full Muay Thai weeb to a British Muay Thai weeb. But the low kicks in this fight, the outside low kick on the lead leg, which is a step-up low kick for the southpaw Rountree against the usually orthodox Yuri Prochazka, he landed it in the first round and like hobbled Yuri visibly. Yuri was throwing these punches and slipping over and stuff and couldn't hold his own weight. And his corner were going 110 again, 110, which I presume is jab, step-up outside low kick. And he just was not going to it anywhere near as what he should have done. Yuri is always in that long-ass stance, looking to pull his head back. He does this thing we call presenting a false distance. If you ever see someone in a long stance with their head over their lead foot, what they're trying to do is to get you to punch at their head and pull back. Roy Jones used to do it all the time. Anderson Silva used to do it all the time. You know, your head is there, but not really, because it's on the front of your stance. It's not in the middle of your stance where it normally would be. So you're just setting a pull counter. It's pull counters on easy mode. But when you do that, your weight is over your lead leg. You can't pick it up, particularly in a long stance. So Yuri has always been super susceptible to being kicked in the legs. You know, this is a guy who got low kicked until he couldn't stand and then knocked out in the first Pereira fight. Came into the second Pereira fight having trained in the woods for months and didn't try and check a single low kick. So that was enormously frustrating that Rountree didn't get to that more. It was very interesting too that this guy loves the clinch, like the striking clinch, the thing that we really, everyone complains we need to see more of that from Muay Thai. But the clinch exchanges in this fight where striking happened, mainly Yuri was winning with nice elbows and just pushing off his face. And uppercuts to the head and then uppercuts to the body. I think he was throwing a vertical fist uppercut with a collar tie, which is always a good one to sneak between the hands, or the forearms rather. I suppose elbows, because you're coming from underneath, but you know what I mean. Side note, just seeing that photo of the dude with his newborn baby, or relatively small baby, in headphones, wrapped in a, like, Alex Pereira short-themed jacket at UFC 320. I mean, fuck that dude. Like, what the fuck is the point of that? Your baby's not going to remember it. Even if it doesn't do any damage to their ears, why are you taking them? Get a babysitter. Ask your parents. Ask your siblings to look after the kid. UFC looking at that like, we should charge admission on newborns because they don't take seats. Anyway, monster knockout from Yuri. There's a clip of him circulating of him watching the main event and like almost in tears cheering for Alex Pereira as Alex Pereira's got Ankalayev on the back foot and then crying when Pereira wins. So, I mean, it is cool, this sort of like bromance rivalry these guys have. I don't think Yuri Prochazka, the improvements I see in him, they do exist, but they are not substantial. He learned a bit more from southpaw stance, but he's always had that. Still has horrible trouble with the kicking game. Still, like, lunging onto punches. You saw the number of times Khalil Rountree swung a massive left overhand and pivoted off, or a right hook and pivoted off, and Yuri, like, took it and shook his head like, oh, I shouldn't have got caught with that, and then just waded back in. And to be fair, Yuri won the fight by, in round 3, just walking through stuff and moving his head and, getting stuff going, but he had to be in the fire to do that. And he just, like, a lot of it is this reliance on his chin. So I don't know if he'll ever catch up to Pereira. I don't think he ever will. But I do think it's rad that he's got this, like, bromance rivalry that drives him to be better. And in fighting, there's always this thing where you don't have to be better than the best fighter in the world on his best day. Because you're very unlucky if you fight him on his best day. But if he is worse than you on your best day, and you come in with everything on point, and you're completely focused, and you've got a good game plan, worse fighters can beat much better fighters. So it's never out of the question. But he is down 2-0, so it's going to be hard to justify giving him a title shot. But then the UFC do like having Alex Pereira there knocking people out. A lot easier to give him the Yuri Prochazka title fight than, I don't know, another... I mean, yes, he just blew Ankalayev out of the water, but Ankalaev's the only guy who's shown he can beat him there. Except maybe Jan Blachowicz. So just don't make either of those fights. Make something he can win. Though in fairness, like Ulberg, I think most of us realised that Dominic Reyes was washed, but I did not expect people to forget Ulberg so quickly. it's like a week ago he smoked Reyes in a fight that people were like, possible number 1 contender fight, and now after this weekend everyone's like, oh, so Yuri's getting another title shot. That's crazy. Poor Ulberg. Stupid, sexy Ulberg. Yusuf Zalal made quick work of Josh Emmett. Danced around on the outside a little bit. Josh Emmett started stepping in his why I order sort of way. And as his overhand was charging to 30% power, he was intercepted by a takedown and Zalal got, I think he got gift wrap on it. Oh, no, he got a seated head and arm and ended up trying to jump on an arm bar. Emmett came up into him, but still got submitted. And he verbally tapped, and the crowd were like, I didn't see what happened, and I'm mad as fuck. They just booed until they showed the replay, and they were still like, oh, all right then. If you want to see one that's like that, but absolutely rad, check out Andrei Arlovsky versus Paul Buentello. This was back when there was no one in the UFC heavyweight division. Everyone was in Pride. People were hoping for Arlovsky versus Mir, but Mir got in a horrible motorcycle accident and had to take a few years off. So it's just Arlovsky versus the schlubbiest schlubs you've ever seen. And Arlovsky hits him with his overhand that knocks him out on his feet. Big John stops the fight, but the crowd are like, what? He was fine. And then you watch the replay, and it's like his eyes roll round in his head and he slumps onto Big John. And it was crazy because if you watch it the first time in full speed, it looks like he's fine. And it is actually a really good stoppage because even the crowd, when they see the slow-mo, go, oh. And that was young Arlovsky with a lion's mane of blonde-dyed hair. Joe Pyfer beat Abus Magomedov. Abus, this dude had one fight where he didn't gas. And people were going, hey, he seems to have fixed the cardio. And I think what happened is he thought it was like a prescription. Like if you get ringworm, take this ointment for 2 weeks and that'll fix it. Rather than an everyday you should be on the treadmill thing. Because Abus came out in round 1, pretty handily out-wrestled Joe Pyfer. Joe Pyfer got the takedown and Abus just hipped up into him and went, no, you get on the bottom. And then came out in round 2 and he's like, oh no, I'm already feeling weak. And Pyfer just took him down and strangled him pretty easily. Like Abus, he was in the bottom of an arm triangle. He turned his back, which is how you get out of the arm triangle. And then he's like, I can't be asked for this. And he's sort of one-handedly hand fighting. This is the one that people always accuse of, like, when you give up in a fight, just give them the rear naked choke. It's nice in MMA. You don't, like, in boxing, it's very hard to give up without people noticing. In MMA, you just go, oh, he beat me to the rear naked choke. That's a shame. Ateba Gauthier versus Tristan Giles. This poor lad, Tristan Giles, came in at short notice because Gauthier was supposed to fight Ozzy Diaz. And that was an obvious setup because Ozzy Diaz has like 3 UFC fights and I think he's been knocked out in 2 of them. But they want to get over that Gauthier knocks people out. So Trevin Giles stepped in at short notice to fight this big knockout artist, comes out, is obviously much smaller, and then he sort of jogs around the ring and tries to dive in at his legs and then run away again. And, it was obvious this guy was scared as fuck. And he got hit with like one punch, ducked in on the hips, and Gauthier hit him with a couple of elbows, and then went to crossface him, and the guy just went, no, and fell on his back. Very sad stoppage, but I was watching that just laughing because Tristan Vines is going to get a second fight in the UFC. He's going to have 2 fights in the UFC before a lot of good fighters who lost on the Contender Series can get 1. Daniel Santos versus Ju Sang Yu. I think I've talked about Ju Sang Yu before because, or if I haven't, racial generalization, but I've said before that, man, the Korean weight cutting technology, I can't even believe it. Some of the lads that you see in like the featherweight division, some of the Korean lads, they are unbelievably huge. And that was definitely the case with this lad. I'd seen him against Jeka Saragi in his last one, smashed him. That was only a couple of months ago. Came out looking terrifying. Kept making fun of Daniel Santos, who was just sort of like workman-like, punch, takedown attempt, wheel kick, punch, takedown attempt. And then he got clapped with a left hook. And it was, Ju Sang Yu was the guy with the left hook that everyone was worried about. But he got caught having like no respect for Daniel Santos. And Daniel Santos was doing good work, by the way. It wasn't like he was getting massively outclassed. So I don't know where Ju Sang Yu's head was at. That he was like, watch me dominate this guy in round 2 like I did in round 1, even though I didn't. Having said that, Chris Gutierrez went back to his corner after losing 2 rounds. And Mark Montoya told him, you're down 2. And he was like, nah. Just cracked me up. Everything his corner said to him, he said something back. It's like, shut the fuck up and listen to your corner. Or stop paying them. Stop going to that gym. Jakub Wicklax versus Patchy Mix. This one has got everyone out being like, Patchy Mix is trash, blah, blah, blah. But I was actually pretty impressed with Wicklax. We're calling him Jakub because I don't know how to say his fucking second name. But this dude, in his last like 8 fights, he's only got a couple of finishes, but both of them were by guillotine choke. He clearly has a guillotine choke that is worthy of some respect because Patchy Mix kept getting a takedown and then having to roll onto his back to get out of the guillotine choke, which is rare in MMA. As in, like, if you can consistently threaten someone like that. And then Jakub had a butterfly guard good enough that he could threaten the sweep constantly. And then when Mix sort of sprawled out to stop himself being lifted over the top, he'd just kick him back to closed guard, lock a body triangle around him, and Mix couldn't do anything. Didn't help that Mix wouldn't strike from the guard. But there was a nice side control escape in this one by Mix that linked with an escape that Corey Sandhagen was doing from the guard. Corey Sandhagen was opening his guard, bringing his arm across Merab's face and using his tricep to pull his head into his armpit. And then he'd get on his side and start sitting and start turning through to turtle. And Patchy Mix was doing that in side control. Sorry, I'm sick as shit at the moment. I've got a really blocked nose. But he cleared the crossface and then he put his arm over the back and started turning into the guy and then reaching for the switch. And that's what Corey was doing from the bottom of guard. He'd let Merab pass to half guard and start looking for the switch, reaching inside his thigh over the arm. And then he was able to pull himself to his knees, basically, which is a good thing to be able to do from flat on your back. In MMA, that is. I did think that Jakub here was playing way too much guard when he needed to prioritize getting up. But then they read the scorecards and he didn't need to prioritize getting up. Patchy Mix lost, even though he was in control for a lot of the fight. But then you like to see people do this occasionally, the judges, because we are supposed to prioritize damage. And we do tend to just award, like, a lot of judges seem to be sort of half-assedly looking at the fight and their phone and then being like, who's on top? Okay, he wins the round. But being on top should not win you a round. I'd like to see it happen in a fight where the guy from the bottom was landing loads of elbows, because I'd like to see damage from the bottom respected. But, beggars can't be choosers. And then nothing else is really standing out at me from the card. There was some okay stuff on the undercard, but not worth raving about. I suppose I can talk about it on Wednesday, Thursday when I chat about the PFL main event. Actually, I'll talk about the rest of the stuff on the PFL card. But if you haven't read the article pre-fight, go read that, because Ankalayev's performance against Pereira in the first fight was still, tells you a lot about how to make Pereira struggle to get his game going. Granted, you have to be a southpaw wrestler who can box. And this is like heavyweight MMA, where it's like, I'm a sloppy banger, but I'll try being southpaw for 1 round out of 3. And the Filthy Casual's Guide to Jack Della Maddalena's body punching against wrestlers is also up on the YouTube. What we got next? We got, Charles Oliveira versus Gamrot. That's a surprise good fight out of nowhere, because Oliveira's opponent was supposed to be Fiziev, and he pulled because he's Fiziev. We also got Montiel Jackson versus Davison Figueiredo. That's surprisingly good. And then, Vicente Luque, who should not be fighting anymore, versus Joel Alvarez, who is good fun, but never been up to welterweight before, at least against anyone good. It's a Brazilian card. There's a load of Brazilians on it. Some of them are good. But we'll chat about it later in the week. I'm your boy Jack Slack, and I'll catch you then. Alex Pereira in red, white, and blue shorts. Main event at the White House. Bless.